Hello, everyone. I welcome you all to this panel discussion on women technology leaders to attain global sustainable development goals, hosted by United Nations Association San Francisco chapter. United Nations Association San Francisco chapter, also fondly known as UNASF, has a charter of educating the people within its jurisdiction about the invaluable work of the United Nations by carrying out local education and advocacy activities related to the UN. It recruits, retains, and engages with the members within its geographic jurisdiction to create a strong constituency of UN supporters. We are fortunate to have the president of UNASF, Mary Steiner, here with us today. As a president of UNASF, she leads the development of platform to provide partnerships to attain global sustainable development goals. Her vision is to bring in more women to the negotiating table for peacemaking and peacekeeping efforts and to protect the universal rights of children. She served as the CEO of UN 75 celebrations in the year 2015 and served as a vice president of UNA USA East Bay. With this, I'd like to invite Mary Steiner, president of UNASF chapter, to provide the opening remarks for this panel discussion. Over to you, Mary.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, Srujana. For those of you who are just becoming acquainted with us, Srujana Kaddevarmuth is Director of Data Sciences and Value Realization at a very large corporation, as well as Secretary to the United Nations Association San Francisco Board of Directors. She is a graduate of the Young Professionals for Sustainable Development Goals seminar series, provided by the University of San Francisco in partnership with the UNASF. She is well qualified and she is really the person who brought together this extraordinary panel of women. And I am thrilled. Our chapter is thrilled because we have made an extra effort to feature the different 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are part of Agenda 2030 for the United Nations. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals include gender equality and also partnerships, peace, justice, and strong institutions, climate action, quality education, the elimination of extreme poverty, just to name a few. It's an ambitious agenda, and to meet it requires skills in data science. Each of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals have an indicator and a target, and there are hundreds of them. And they multiply and they move around, and each country is measured by their accomplishment of the various indicators and targets. Needless to say, we have fallen a little behind because of the global pandemic. Yet the global pandemic exposes the extreme need for science and for equality in science, bringing in women as leaders to help implement the Sustainable Development Goals and to report to us, include us as members of all of society in that process. And that is really the meaning behind World Science Day for Peace and Development. It actually was founded in India in 1968, and the UN has been celebrating it every November 10th. It's more meaningful today and more essential, as recognized by UNESCO, to help us deal with the pandemic, and in doing so, achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm really ecstatic to have all of you here and to work with our audience in ways to advance the equality of women while we assist and develop our society.
Thank you, Mary, for those wonderful opening remarks. We are very excited to host this panel discussion on women technology leaders to attain global sustainable development goals. Global issues such as climate crisis, lack of access to quality education, gender inequalities, have further exacerbated due to global pandemic crisis. COVID-19 crisis has further revealed many inequalities like lack of basic access to technology and has displaced many women from technology workforce. This panel discussion primarily aims at discussing all those aspects on how women technology leaders can help bridge these gaps, play a vital role in attaining global sustainable development goals, and inspire young professionals in general and women in particular to take up technology careers to contribute to a cause. We have an amazing panel here with us today with highly accomplished women technology leaders who are making great strides in the technology domain in leveraging technology to attain global sustainable development goals and in significant technology enablement to overcome global pandemic crisis. Let me take this opportunity to introduce this amazing panel to you. Starting with Mia. Mia Chardin is a CEO of Lighthouse 3, a strategic research and advisory firm based out of Oakland, California. She advises large organizations on responsible innovation at scale using new and emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. She is a founder of Women in AI and Ethics Initiative and a creator of 100 Brilliant Women in AI and Ethics list. She serves on the board of UNASF. Welcome, Mia. Next, we have Karen Mathis. Karen is the Executive Director, External Partners at Institute of Computational and Mathematical Engineering at Stanford University. She leads ICME relationships with various organizations, specifically in the area of research, curriculum, engineering events, and campus recruiting. She's an instructor for the new AI for Social Good seminar series held at Stanford. She serves as an advisor for Stanford Catalyst Initiative on Interdisciplinary Research. She's the co-founder and co-director for Women in Data Science Initiative, which is a humongous movement consisting of hundreds of participants across the globe with more than 100+ countries participating in that. Welcome, Karen. We have Linda Collin next. Linda is an entrepreneur, activist, and community leader based out of San Francisco, California. She is a founder and executive producer of Career Girls Foundation, which and also a nonprofit organization which actually emerged as a response to inequality of opportunities that Linda faced in her own story. She serves as the president of Career Girls Foundation and also serves on the advisory board of various other foundations, such as Take Your Daughters and Sons to Work Foundation, World Affairs, Alliance for Girls, and Friends of Commission on Status of Women. Welcome, Linda. Next, we have Rose-Margaret Ekeng-Itua. Rose-Margaret is a professor of engineering, TED Education lesson creator, and a speaker with more than 15 years of experience in STEM higher education. She champions humanitarian engineering pedagogy, which fosters design thinking approach to come up with amicable solutions for sustainable development goals as prescribed by United Nations. She is a chair of IEEE site and a member of UNA Women and Education. She is the director of Silicon Valley Engineering Council and SW Special Director. Welcome, Rose-Margaret. I'm very excited and fortunate to moderate this panel here today. My name is Srujana Kaddevarmuth. As Mary briefly introduced, I lead the Charter of Data Science and Value Creation with one of the leading corporates here in the Bay Area, California. I enjoy fostering the community of young professionals, specifically in the data science domain, and actively collaborating with United Nations Association and achieving sustainable development goals through responsible usage of technologies such as artificial intelligence. I also serve on the board of UNSF. All right, now moving on to the most awaited part of this event, that's the panel discussion itself. Women in tech statistics indicated that men dominate the technology domain. A significant majority, nearly 80% of the positions in the technology domain are held by men, with only 20% being held by women. Now, that is a huge inequality in itself. However, the situation would have been even bleaker when you started your career in the technology domain, especially because it's male dominated. John Mark Green, a philosopher and a writer, once said, "I traded easy answers with honest questions, being judgmental with open-hearted curiosity, burned all maps and discovered my own path." Our personal journeys help us reflect and teaches us a lot along the way. We'd like to hear your personal journeys and stories on how you started your career in this male-dominated field of technology and any reflections, learnings, and experience along the way. Karen, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm happy to. And thank you, first of all, Srujana and Mary and everyone who put this panel together. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be on the panel. And to all of you in the audience, it's great to connect on Zoom. I'm happy to continue the conversation on LinkedIn afterwards if you want to reach out, and feel free to. As far as my journey, I started as an engineer, as an undergraduate. Systems engineering is my field. And I worked for several years in telecommunications engineering. And throughout all the studies time and the engineering, I was generally one of very few women in any group that I belonged to. And if there were other women, we were generally all the junior people. There were never any senior women role models, I have to say. After spending several years in engineering, I actually ended up going back to school. I left engineering and went back for an MBA at Stanford. And after that, I worked at Apple Computer for what seemed like a lifetime. It was a lot of fun. But I also, throughout the experiences I had as a young woman in a career, I saw and I experienced myself a number of examples of discrimination. And I guess two things that stuck out for me that helped me get through all that. One is that I sought and found some excellent male mentors and champions for my work. And I really do appreciate, I'm grateful for all the male allies and support along the way. I think that was really critical. And also, I just kept going. I put those blinders on and kept giving myself the pep talk, even if I felt like an imposter in some roles. I was running around the world launching Macintosh, going into management, and I just kept going, telling myself, you can do this. You know, you can make it through, make it happen. So I thought that was really important to share. And then flash forward now, I'm at Stanford, as Srujana mentioned. It's my pleasure to work there with an ecosystem that I'm building of companies, of people in government, academia, coming together, very interdisciplinary to solve some important societal challenges. And 5 years ago, I started co-founded along with two others, the Women in Data Science Conference and initiatives to really help encourage, inspire more women and educate everyone regardless of gender, and just support women at all levels of their studies and careers that they can really succeed in data science and related fields. So I'm excited today to share more about this later in the panel.
Good. Male allies as well as pep talk, very important messages, right? Cool. Linda, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And again, thank you, Srujana, for inviting me to participate. So my journey begins really with a lifelong fondness for data and visual storytelling. You know, going back to those encyclopedias that had the Mylar overlays, they really set me up for being naturally drawn to geographic information systems. And I was particularly taken with the way it visually displays data to support analysis, decision-making, resource allocation. And so my earliest experiences with geographic information systems were in the public sector, where I used the technology in redistricting in the 1990s. And then later on, I went to direct a statewide base mapping project for resource allocation domestically. And then that ultimately led me to the opportunity to work on a land information system in the newly independent state of Kyrgyzstan. And that was in support of their transition to a market economy. And, you know, they would bring all the USAID contractors together. And in that room, there might have been one or two other women, no one else Black or brown. And I knew the only reason I was in that room was because of what I know, how my mind works, my level of educational attainment. And it was really at that point that I became absolutely determined to get more women, and especially women of color, to learn about emerging technologies. So that's how I went on to found careergirls.org. And while I'm not an expert in AI, I do get to be expert adjacent in terms of interviewing the 700 plus women on our website.
Very inspiring story indeed. Mia, do you want to share your glimpses and reflections on this?
Sure, I'm happy to. First of all, thank you so much, Srujana, for putting this together. And this is such an amazing panel. And the stories are so inspiring. So I'm excited to be here. So my journey is somewhat unique. I'm the odd one out on this panel. I do not have an engineering degree or some technical degree. I landed in Silicon Valley about 15 years back. And my first role was at eBay. So I have a marketing background, but I've always worked on technology, infrastructure, data. I'm a data nerd. So I love working with that and governance. How do we manage all this? This was at the time when social media was just taking off. Nobody really knew what Zuckerberg was doing. And everybody thought Bezos was, you know, building all these warehouses. They had no idea like what his end goal or his mission was. So now we know better, fast forward. So as I transitioned through different roles through my journey in Silicon Valley, working for some of the biggest names, I found that there's this overwhelming tendency to always, we favor in Silicon Valley things that are innovative, right? You've all heard the phrase, move fast, break things. And which is what got us into the situation we are in today. There are a lot of issues with technology because we are breaking things, and you're breaking human lives here. So throughout my journey, I came about 5 years back, I started Lighthouse 3, which was in response to, I was going through a personal crisis. My mom had just passed away. And I wanted to put my skills to good use, not to just sell more technology. I wanted to actually take a closer look at what was, how can we develop technology so it works for everyone? So responsible innovation, that's what I focus on now. About 2 years back, another tragedy, my mom passed away. So I channeled my grief into looking at the space of emerging technology, looking at AI specifically, and looking at the hidden voices, the hidden figures. These are women who are working very hard to save humanity from the downsides of AI. So that's Women in AI Ethics Initiative came about. It is meant to increase representation and recognition of women working in the space, empower them to tell their own stories, because we give so much space to men and so much space to especially white men. There are many expert women out there, and they're not all technologists. They are social scientists, they're researchers, they're policy writers, they're folks who are also they're women who are making law. We need to bring them into the fold. So my mission is to make AI and emerging technology more inclusive. So we're not raising the bar so high that women can't, keep people out, but to make it so accessible so we invite more people in.
Very inspiring indeed. Responsible innovation is a key, right? Cool. Rose-Margaret, do you want to share your personal journey?
Okay, thank you so much, Srujana, for the opportunity to be on this amazing panel. So my engineering journey is quite personal. Started, I think, when I was about 8 years old. I grew up in a diplomatic family. Lots of my family members were diplomats, so we got to travel the world as a kid, but all through our journeys, I noticed that lots of the other kids never really knew about Africa. their concept of Africa was that, oh, we live on top of trees, etc. And so that kind of gave me the motivation to pursue a career that could somehow bridge the communication gap in the world and get the whole world to communicate together so people will actually get to understand each other and eradicate false stereotypes. And so again, with my mother being initially a biology teacher and then getting into public service and diplomacy, she always drummed into our heads or our ears, make your life count. So at an early age, we knew we had to pursue careers that will make our lives count or impact people's lives. So in high school, I fell in love with physics, especially electromagnetism, and I remembered my dream to help the whole world communicate. And so that's why I pursued electrical electronics engineering, specializing in telecommunications. And like Karen mentioned, I think I was out of about 180 students in our EE class, we were just about 3 or 5 women or girls then. But then my telecommunications journey just continued. And this is what I say to my students: make sure you pursue a career or a profession that will help you evolve over time as technology evolves. And so I studied telecommunications, but then soon after, mobile and satellite systems were the hot thing. And so I went to grad school and studied mobile and satellite communications. And then at that point, when I was about to start my doctorate degree, my interest was really, how can I use all this to tie up and serve humanity better? And so for my PhD, I pursued cybernetics, which really helped me see the human interface of technology. Fast forward, I then went into academia because I felt that was where my passion was. And I was a senior lecturer at the University of West London and the chair of the engineering department there, where again, I saw that in my classes, there were hardly any female students and hardly any underrepresented students. And so the thought of how can I change the curriculum, the engineering curriculum, to make it more inclusive. And that is how I started thinking about humanitarian engineering and culturally responsive engineering. And then moving to the United States about 8 years ago, I had the opportunity to really innovate and change the curriculum and include culturally responsive pedagogy and humanitarian engineering pedagogy that has really taken off and helped increase the number of female and underrepresented students in engineering. And I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about me later, but my students focus on solving UN SDGs, and UN SDGs in engineering have really helped increase the number of female students and underrepresented students in engineering.
Truly inspiring journeys, I should say. Women in tech statistics actually indicate that only 37% of the tech startups have at least one woman on their board of directors. The statistics further reveals that only 20% of the technology jobs have been held by women. And out of them, only 26% of the computing related jobs are held by women. And out of that, only 3% of the computing related jobs are held by African American women, 6% by Asian women, 2% by Hispanic women. CNN Business recently indicated that hundreds of thousands of women were displaced from the workforce recently over the last few months as compared to men, as pandemic continues to exacerbate inequalities in American economy. 617,000 women were displaced from their workforce in September alone, as compared to 78,000 men, as per the government data released in the month of October. And the most striking fact is, more than 50% of these women were in their prime working age of between 35 to 44 years. So it is evident that pandemic has continued to exacerbate inequality and also to displace many women from the workforce, or at the least has increased the workload on them, both personally and professionally, thereby negatively impacting their emotional, psychological, and physical well-being. How do we successfully overcome these challenges? What are your thoughts on this, Linda?
Well, you know, one of the first things that happened for us at Career Girls is as a digital platform with educational resources and video and curriculum and virtual programming, we knew that we could be part of a parent's toolkit to help them in terms of, learning, online learning and distance learning at home. So immediately we started reaching out to mom blogs and educators and to let them know that with our resource, we take educational video, we have expertly created downloadable curriculum, and we allow the lessons, the wisdom of over 700 women that we've filmed for career girls who talk about what they do, and most importantly, how anybody watching can prepare themselves for a career of the future. And they give a context for the academic subjects that in the classroom teachers were imparting, and then at home that you had parents stepping into this breach to help their children learn. And so as a result, we have over 12,000 video clips of women sharing their first-person narratives about the workplace, their educational and life journeys. And we also provide downloadable toolkits for parents, educators, and mentors. And then one initiative that I'd like to talk a little bit more about is this summer, we offered our first virtual summer camp that was focused on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. And we were able to get a cohort of 28 girls from all around the US who were for a week engaged with role models who participated virtually. And so we really created this very robust experience, educational experience, that wasn't their standard, let's get on the Zoom and, have their teacher present content, but it was a way for family members to make sure that their children were still building upon the learning and the academic skills that they're going to need in order to, prepare themselves for college readiness, entering college, and then of course, entering the workplace pipeline. So those are some of the things that, as an online resource, we made sure that we got the word out and make using our content as easy as possible. And then the last thing I'll add is we also have our content and our resources available offline to the 52% of the world that doesn't have internet connectivity. And I can talk more about that as time goes on.
Sounds good. Mia, I know for sure you've been doing a lot of work in this space. What's your perspective on this?
Hi. So thank you for asking that question, because it's very timely. And we are finding that many women in our community are struggling. And I'll just address the elephant in the room. This notion of gender equality, which is SDG 5, it was, so what COVID has done is laid it bare, that the equality was based on this notion that women will have all these resources and support systems available, whether it's daycare, whether it's childcare, whether it's nannies, the school systems. So the moment those go away during the pandemic, become inaccessible, the onus is right back on the women to do not only the work that they've been doing, which was already hard in the workplace, is hard, as you've heard from the amazing women on this panel. That was hard as is, but then to tackle the housework on top of it, the schoolwork, it's a lot. So women are struggling, and this is something we need to address. And I'll just put it out there. We're telling women do more, and they're already doing more. So I think it's time to start asking women to step up and do more. And we need support from men. we should be raising little boys and young boys who say it's not enough for, to say to women to say, okay, you go ahead and do things. You should also tell your little boys and your men in your life that it's okay to let the women succeed. And with our first vice president-elect, the first woman vice president-elect, we finally have a very first second gentleman. They had to figure out what her husband would be called. And I think it's critical because we not only need to emulate and be role models, because there's no shortage of amazing women, right? Men also have to model those behaviors so that women can go out and do these amazing things. And the workplace. So workplaces, I had to drop out of the technology with the corporate life because it's just not conducive to working women, especially as a single parent and an immigrant who did have a support system. It was very hard. So personally, I don't want that for anyone else. So workplaces need to step up, and conference organizers, I have always allowed, like at our events, you can bring your children. You can totally do, if you don't have daycare, you don't have childcare, after work care, we have to make it easier. And even the virtual events, we help them. We give women extra time. We work with them. We will have to change the way we approach things. We cannot work, we can't use the same system we use for men to help women. We have to create a different system that actually works for women.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. One of the very interesting thing that I would like to call out is, as we see, there is emergence of interdisciplinary domains, right? So we are seeing artificial intelligence, robotics, as well as Internet of Things. These domains are picking up and seeing a huge rate of adoption of these technologies across multiple industries, and they are influencing multiple facets of our lives. As we are seeing such huge rate of adoption, there is also predictions on these technology domains growing to greater sizes as well. So Fortune Business predicted that artificial intelligence business would grow to the market size of around $267 billion by the year 2027, which is just humongous. When there is such a huge rate of adoption of these technologies across all the domains, across all the industries that we could possibly think of, and also when these technologies are being used by people of all genders, different ethnicities, as well as all sections of society, it only makes sense to have them amongst the people who are producing and manufacturing these technologies, isn't it? How and why should we work towards having an accurate representation of women in these new emerging technology domains? Karen, I know that you've been doing a lot of work in this space. Would you like to take a stab at giving a response on this?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. I'm sure everyone has some great ideas here. And it's an excellent question. First, people always ask, well, why does diversity even matter here in these new technology fields? And there's three key reasons that I see. One is that, as you said, the AI and other technologies are really impacting everything in our lives. And so it's really critical that we have representation from women, representation from all minorities. They should all have a seat at the table when these things are being designed so that we have solutions that really work for all of us. So I think that's critical. The second is that almost every day I see articles in the news about things that have gone wrong, unintended consequences of data science or AI around privacy, around bias, you name it. And I believe that with this diversity upfront in the design process, in these technology roles, you're going to mitigate those issues because you're going to have those diverse perspectives that will raise the flag and say, have you considered this? Or what about this? And you're just much more likely to come out with a solution that really holistically addresses what needs to be solved in a way that really does work for us all. And then finally, diversity is just good for the bottom line financially. There's a lot of studies that show diverse teams outperform homogenous teams from a profitability standpoint. So with that said, what are we trying to do about that? I'm really thrilled that I can be part of this WIDS movement because what we're trying to do is create opportunities to connect women around the world. We have a conference In fact, our next one is on March 8th, which happens to be International Women's Day. So please save the date. It will be a virtual conference, 24 hours long with celebration, starting in Asia Pacific, follow the sun, celebrate at the end of 24 hours in Hawaii, virtually. And so it will be just a wonderful way to highlight excellent women in the field, to inspire us all. And then we'll be having a lot of educational programming, workshops, tutorials, and that sort of thing to give that boost to the confidence and the skills of women around the world. And it's for everyone. Men are welcome to join as well. So it's really open to all genders. We just have women, outstanding women speaking, because that's really what we want to highlight, are those role models. And that's the WIDS conference. Our initiative is quite broad. We have a datathon, a podcast series, education outreach to teenagers. We're now hitting over 100,000 people around the world. We had, I think Srujana mentioned, we had events in, I think it was over 180 events this year in every continent except Antarctica. And so we are really trying to empower these groups around the world to have events and programming that makes sense in their local community. And I add just one more thing beyond even WIDS, is that it's great to do a lot of initiatives and programs, but you have to measure too, where you stand and where you're going. And so for companies, for other organizations, we really are encouraging them to measure their level of representation. Because unless you measure it, you don't really know where the gaps are that you need to address. So even if they don't publicly announce it, we're really working hard to get companies, academia, government groups, you name it, to really measure and take a benchmark today and then check it every year at least and see how they're doing around this diverse representation.
That's wonderful. Rose-Margaret, I assume that you would have seen similar challenges in terms of having accurate representation of women in the technology domain, especially in the subjects that you are instructing within your own domain, right, within the university and academic field. What are your perspectives on this? How and what efforts should we take to make sure that we have accurate representation of women in the technology domain?
Thank you so much, Srujana, for that question. I think Karen did an excellent job at answering, so I'll just add a few things to what Karen had said. Diversity is extremely important in engineering as a whole, and even more so in AI, robotics, and the Internet of Things, which is really our future. A Harvard Business Review said that 75% of unpaid care lies on the shoulders of women. So taking care of children, taking care of parents, taking care of the elderly. Women are involved in the day-to-day runnings of the family, and in fact, the day-to-day runnings of the society. And so if we're saying that IoT and AI is going to permeate through our everyday life, who best to have at the table than women, who are really the people that use the products, who are the people that will be the ones that are helping the other end users like children and the elderly. So it's extremely important to ensure that, and also even in my classroom, I have an IoT class that I'm currently teaching, and actually it was yesterday, yes, that we're talking about issues around AI ethics on the project students were working on. And the students are working on different IoT projects around COVID-19. And one of the IoT systems that they're working on is socially distancing IoT system to ensure that everyone is socially distanced. And it was interesting, it was actually the female students that could immediately spot the possible ethical violations in terms of body shaming. So what if it's someone that is bigger, that is standing? Will there be any sort of body shaming occurring? And it was really interesting to note that it's the female students that were actually able to spot most of the ethical violations. In the intro, I think I forgot to mention, I'm the coordinator for the Smart Manufacturing Technology Program at Ohlone College. We have been recognized as a Center of Excellence for Industry 4.0. So we are leading the charge for Industry 4.0 because we see the importance of Industry 4.0 in society as a whole. And so to that end, we also had an NSF grant, of which I'm the PI, to really support increase in representation in Industry 4.0 industries of women and people of ethnic minorities. And so we are really reaching out strategically to reach out to female students and also underrepresented folks, because yes, we've got COVID-19, but this might not be the only pandemic. And so we want to ensure that if we have another pandemic, we have breached the digital divide for women, because we find that there's a huge digital divide. And so with Industry 4.0, we seek to breach that divide so women can sit in the comfort of their homes and work in the manufacturing sector, work in any sector, even with their children running up and down. As a mother experience that, I have my son coming in every time to get a hug. And I'm like, okay, I'm in the middle of a class. So what is really essential is that we bridge the digital divide because Industry 4.0 is here to stay, and what is really stopping women in getting into these fields is just the lack of digital literacy. And at Ohlone College, we're really taking active steps to bridge that gap.
That's great to know, especially because when we consider technology domain, we feel that it's male dominated, but I feel that manufacturing domain in itself is overwhelmingly male dominated. So you are trying to create the change that we are expecting to happen across the globe, across different industries and sectors, which is amazing. Great to hear that, Rose-Margaret. Linda, what are your perspectives on this? How do we ensure accurate representation? I know you've been doing a lot of work with girls to catch them early on in the life cycle. So how do you?
I just want to underscore what our previous speakers had said about the issues in ethical AI. You know, about 2 years ago, since I became aware of Joy Buolamwini's groundbreaking research on the deficiencies of facial recognition technology, I set out to interview as many diverse women working in AI, machine learning, and robotics as we could at our video shoots around the world. Just a point I'd like to make here, careergirls.org, we're a global website. We had 19 million page views from 232 countries and territories worldwide. So we like to source role models from places that are as diverse as our audience. So as a result, we interviewed 22 women. And then from those interviews, we created those empowerment lesson videos, curriculum, and activities on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. As I also mentioned, we conducted 2 actually virtual summer camps for girls targeted their ages 9 to 13. The thing that was really encouraging about that is from those students who participated in the first summer camp that we had that involved 16 women who actively participated virtually in fireside chats and in breakout sessions. We were able to hold a second camp 6 weeks later with a deeper dive in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And 10 of those girls, so we had a 30% conversion, who wanted to continue to learn more about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we were very encouraged by the fact that we were able, just by closing the imagination gap for this group of girls on, you know, what is an algorithm, what are data sets, how do you avoid bias in data sets, and the role that empathy plays, as Rose was just talking about, in programming robots that are going to better serve humanity. So it was an extraordinary experience for us. We Our role models loved it, our campers loved it, and it's something that we're going to continue to do because it really does move the needle in terms of helping girls understand what these technologies are, how powerful they are, and that there's a role for them, and that they can see women who are already working there and just encouraging them to pursue those careers.
That's true. So actually, we are on this cusp of artificial intelligence revolution, right? Which I believe is the single largest technology revolution that our species has ever encountered. We have more companies and governments these days taking up chances and using algorithms to make some very important decisions that affects people's lives and livelihoods. Some of the very important decisions have been delegated to algorithms, such as loan approvals, recruiting, legal sentencing, and even campus admissions. Some of the less important, less vital decisions too have been delegated to algorithms, such as internet searches, product recommendations, dating matches, and what goes up on the social media feed. However, these technologies, even though many a times they work well and in our favor, sometimes they may perpetuate and amplify bias and lead to unintended consequences. Which is really lethal, right? Especially if they are used by government agencies and corporates, which have got such humongous presence. And especially if these technologies are used in the domain of social good, then it can result in undesired outcomes. Primarily because furthering the agenda of social good with dangerous technology defeats the very purpose of their application. So what is your opinion on a need of an hour for building more ethical, transparent technologies which are unbiased, and how can women play a vital role in this? I know, Kiran, we've been discussing about this for some time, and you have some very interesting perspectives to share on this. Would you like to share that with the audience?
Sure. I think this is a really critical area, and it's really critical for women as well as all leaders. I taught AI for Social Good seminar series earlier this year, and we had a number of speakers addressing this from different perspectives. And I think number one is that our leaders need to establish some frameworks within the organizations to address these critical challenges, so that when groups are designing new products and new services and solutions across all these different areas that you just mentioned, that they really step back and think about what do they need to consider regarding biases that potentially could come into it, privacy, trust, ethics in general. They need to think about who are the stakeholders that they should bring in early and what is the input from the stakeholders. And I think really setting those frameworks up front, those guiding principles, is so critical here. And then the groups can go and work. Of course, it's not so clear-cut overall because, for instance, in areas like fairness, there are 21 different mathematical definitions of fairness. And so when you're considering a solution that involves AI, for instance, and you're trying to be fair in your using an algorithm, like you said, to predict something, to make some decision or support some decisions, how do you decide which fairness measures to use? And so I think this is where the senior leaders really have to stand up and share that and guide teams on how they can look at fairness. What does ethics mean within the organization? What are the trade-offs? Because it's always an optimization issue. Like, for instance, you may want to have transparency. Of course, that sounds awesome. But what if you have an algorithm that is transparent but doesn't really work that well, and you have another algorithm that works way better but is less transparent? How do you make those difficult trade-offs? And I think ultimately this is where our leaders, well, first they need to be educated, and then secondly, they really need to come together and create these frameworks and guiding principles to guide everyone in their organization so that everyone is in sync on the same page here.
And can I just echo, I mean, what you're doing with this program that you've created for us, Srujana, is educating the public. You know, women are half the users of this technology, and, you know, we need to take our cues from, you know, folks who are on at the forefront, the Joy Buolamwini's, Mia, you know, other folks who are looking at these ethical issues in AI and educating the public on, you know, you need to ask the question, where does this data come from? Did people have permission? You know, what's going on with that algorithm? Really helping the public at large understand that there's technology and that there's people designing the technology that are impacting every aspect of their life. So I think just what you're doing, Srujana, and bringing us all together and getting experts to discuss what the stakes are is a wonderful intervention in and of itself.
Can I build on that a little? Srujana, can you hear me?
Yes, Mia.
Okay, yeah. Is it coming through clearly now?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So plus one to what Linda said, also what Kieran said, one of the, when we talked about representation before, one of the things we do in Women in AI Ethics, during the pandemic, they introduced a mentoring program. So what we do, it's meant for women within transition, or if you're a student who's lost an opportunity during the pandemic, or you're looking for someone who's been there, done that, pioneers in this space. And so we've had Kate for Dr. Field and others like luminaries in this field who took the time, out of their busy schedules to help women, other women who were struggling during the time. So the solidarity have helped having pioneering women take the time to also help others with their health. Linda, you mentioned Joy, such a big fan of her work, and she's definitely been at the leading edge of this. And what I liked about her approach and approach of Sophia Noble, Dr. Sophia Noble, Timnit Gebru, and others, all Black women, amazing women, is that they not only look at ethics of technology, because an ethically built technology can also be unethical. It can be used unethically. So they're saying, don't only look at whether this technology is built ethically, is it fair, is it transparent, but they're looking, should that technology even exist? They take a very customer-centric, very human-centric role, which I appreciate more. And I feel like we need to create an environment where it's okay to ask that question. And the only way we do that is bring in these voices, right? Because the users, the humans, right? Not just the developers of technology, but the ones who will be using this technology, and the marginalized communities, women, who are going to be most impacted, they need to have a seat at the table when we talk about ethics of AI.
Srujana, can I just add to what you just said? I think that was excellently said. And definitely it's important to start educating people at young ages about ethical issues. That is why I think engineering, computer science, data science curriculum need to be infused with ethical issues. It needs to be standard so that the next generation of engineers and scientists understand ethical issues before it's too late for us. And just wanted to also talk about what the real problem is. The real problem is that corporations are not putting their money where their mouth is. So we know what the issue is. But I think Karen mentioned this, a trade-off between optimization. It is important for companies, government to start putting and investing funds into this because it is a serious issue. Again, I take some examples from my class, and I was having this discussion in my IoT class. And we talked about face recognition systems, again, to check temperature. We were looking at IoT systems during COVID-19. And so I asked the student, what is the potential ethical issue here? And they're like, well, nothing really. And then I said to them, where is the data coming from? We've got historic data that discriminates against Black and brown people. And so chances of it flagging on a person of color is higher than it flagging on someone who doesn't have a darker skin pigmentation. And so I said, So therefore, it will be flagging up that Black or brown people are in violation of either social distancing or probably have higher temperatures, which they might not have, and furthermore, discriminating and increasing the socioeconomic gap. So it is extremely important, if we are really serious about equity at all, that we address ethical issues in AI, data science, IoT, robotics, else 10 years from now, we're going to be in an even worse situation in terms of equity gaps. However, AI, data science can help us to improve equity if we really look at cleaning up the data, making sure we've got new data that actually represents the people that use the data and is true data. And that is why I encourage many women, whether you're a computer scientist or engineer, get involved in data science, understand data analytics, so that you'll be part of the people that question, why are we using this data? Because that's what AI is, pattern recognition using data. Where did this data come from? And so it's extremely important that women really get involved in data science. And I think all the panelists here are doing amazing work in encouraging women in data science.
I agree with all of your comments, and especially this particular domain is a little gray at this point of time because regulatory framework in itself is still evolving. A lot of regulations around data privacy and ethics are still being formulated. And also sometimes they may be viewed as really conflicting in terms of the speed that the corporates want to achieve, right? To kind of invest time in setting the governance and other things straight. So all those challenges definitely ahead of us, but yeah, very optimistic that hopefully with brilliant women in technology space, we should be able to overcome those challenges, right? So this brings us to another very important aspect that all of you touched upon is getting more women to contribute to the social causes, right? So as per United Nations 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development, which was adopted by most of the UN member states in the year 2015, there is a shared blueprint that's provided for peace and prosperity, for people and planet, and for future as well as for now. At its heart are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call for action by all the nations, both developed and developing nations in global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand in improving the health, quality of education, reducing various inequalities, all while spurring economic growth and tackling climate change issues while preserving and conserving our forests and oceans. How do we mobilize more young professionals in general and women in particular to contribute to the attainment of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? What are your perspectives on that? Rose-Margaret, I know that you've been doing a lot of work in that space. Do you want to share some perspectives on that?
Okay, thank you, Srujana, for that question. I think the UN SDGs in its nature is really aligned to engaging women. And that is why I use the UN SDGs in my classroom to increase the number of women. So I do not think we'll have a big issue encouraging women to participate in developing solutions to problems highlighted by UN SDGs. I think women, by the very nature of who we are, we want to really make changes. So I think what we really need to do, especially in academia, is to ensure that we include humanitarian engineering or humanitarian computer science. I think the work that Karen is doing is really amazing. I think data science for good or AI for good, that is really great, because once female students or women see the relevance or how the work that they'll do will impact the world, they engage easily. And that is why in my classroom, when I started in introducing the UN SDGs, I think about 7 years ago, we suddenly saw an increase in the number of students that participated in the class. And also we saw an increase in retention. I think our retention rate was about 90%. We were able to retain 90% of female students in the classroom. So including this in curriculum, reaching out using UN SDGs to do outreach events and getting support. And sometimes we think that there's not a lot of support there. There's lots of support currently with a group of folks. I'll not mention their names. We just applied for another NSF grant to support what we are calling culturally responsive pedagogy in engineering. And really it's just taking the UN SDGs, infusing it in engineering curriculum, taking it to middle schools and high schools, and training teachers, middle school, high school teachers, on how to include the UN SDGs into their curriculum. So that is the grant we've applied for, to train all teachers in the United States on how to infuse the UN SDGs into their classrooms. And we think that by doing so, we will definitely have more women engaged in science, more women engaged in engineering, and the diversity issue will be yesterday's talk. We'll not have to bother about the people at the table designing AI systems or IoT systems. We will have them. So UN SDGs is God sent and is a perfect match for women. We've just got to make sure that we get support from policymakers, organizations, and government to make sure we implement them.
Here now, you've been running multiple challenges which are at global scale on applying AI for social good, specifically in the form of datathons, hackathons. Want to share some perspectives on that in the context of achieving sustainable development and SDGs?
Sure, absolutely. The WIDS conference, we are trying to increase the percentage women in data science and AI and related fields, but it really touches on all the SDGs. In fact, the speakers that we have and that we invite to come to our main conference every year, the most popular ones are generally around those areas where data science is having real societal impact or environmental impact, or that are addressing responsible AI and data science topics. For instance, with LaTanya Sweeney, professor at Harvard, talking about privacy, or Timnit Gebru, who's at Google, talking about bias and facial recognition. We really find that these are topics that draw more women into the field, like Rose-Margaret was saying. One of the things we've done is that we believe it's really important for women around the world to get involved with datathons. Traditionally, hackathons and datathons are very male-dominated. I know myself, when I've gone to some, it's kind of off-putting to see lots of energy for 48 hours, a lot of smell in the room, a lot of pizza boxes and trash in the room. It's just not a really pleasant experience from my past perspective. And so we wanted to change that model and make it much more attractive for women around the world to get involved, to learn predictive analytics skills, which we think is really incredibly important for them and their careers, in their CVs, in their GitHub, whatever they're doing. So our WIDS Datathon, which any of you are welcome to join. Every year we have one. We choose a social impact topic. That's first and foremost. We encourage everyone to join, but the teams have to be at least 50% women so that the women's voices are really heard on the Datathon teams. And then third, we have created a space, and Srujana has been fabulous working with us on this, to have workshops where we bring women together in a local community or remote, but they have more of a collaborative feel and community bidding feel versus a competitive, hardcore, I'm gonna win this competition. So it's much more about meeting people, learning from each other, learning some new skills in data science. And then, maybe you will be one of the winners, but that's kind of secondary. It's more about these other things. And I think because of that, we've been able to get over 3,000 participants last year, 80% women from 85 different countries around the world. And so we're hoping to increase that this year. Check out our WIDS website. It will launch in January, at the beginning of January, and you're all welcome to join. Newbies are welcome.
Oh, Linda, your perspectives on this?
Yes, thank you. The SDG number 5, gender equality, really is a guiding principle behind all of the work that we do with career girls in terms of career preparation and college readiness. So, just by showing so many women who are working in various careers, especially with a focus on STEM, and in particular, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. You know, we, based on myriad third-party research, know that there's impact in terms of keeping girls on track academically in math and science when they can see women who are working in fields that are utilizing those particular topics. Then on the international arena, I was very happy we worked with an implementing partner in Rwanda last year called Starlight Africa, where they used our video of African role models that we filmed at a video shoot in Kigali, Rwanda, and our downloadable curriculum, but they customized it for their local context, bringing in objectives from the Rwandan Ministry of Education, but also United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There were several that they looped in terms of this pilot project where 100 girls, 2 hours outside of Kigali, watched our video and engaged in questions with these local implementing partners that hit upon the SDGs as well as the educational objectives that the role models were discussing and that the ministry, the education ministry in Rwanda wanted to share. And then one last thing I'd like to mention is I also serve as the president of the Friends of the Commission on the Status of Women. And the Friends nonprofit has partnered for the last 3 or 4 years with the American Association of University Women to do salary negotiation workshops. It's a national initiative, but here in San Francisco, the Friends and AAUW have presented a series of salary negotiation workshops to help women understand how to advocate for themselves, demand better compensation, benefits, promotions, and there's also curriculum within the salary negotiation materials that they have to help college students who are negotiating for that very first salary that sets them on the trajectory for, you know, SDG number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. So, you know, there's many ways that I am involved as a leader in the community, but certainly as the founder of Career Girls, that number one goal of making sure that girls everywhere could see role models that could impact them to stay on track academically and then pursue any career that they would like to.
That's amazing. Rose-Margaret, you had some perspectives that you wanted to share.
Yeah, just wanted to add to what everyone has already said, that another way we can really engage women is by building businesses around the UN SDGs and encouraging women to become social entrepreneurs. And I think this should start at college level. So we are starting what we call Engineering for Social Justice Shark Tank, and students have built prototypes, technological solutions for each of the 17 UN SDGs. I mean, the laced COVID-19 around it, and they're going to be pitching to venture capitalists. And so it's important that women students start seeing that, hey, the UN SDGs can actually help them form their businesses and they can become social entrepreneurs. I think that's one of the things we need to support more in the society, to encourage women to look at each of the UN SDGs, which one can actually form a business around and become social entrepreneurs. And I will be sending out invitations to all the panelists for our Engineering for Social Justice Shark Tank on the 4th of December. But again, also including it in the curriculum so that students start learning, female students start learning that they can become social entrepreneurs that center around the 17 UN SDGs is great.
I just want to add to that, Rose-Margaret. So the three women who were the founders of Starlight Africa. Their business is to get people to move away from kerosene lighting onto solar. And they were interested in working with us because they wanted girls to learn about STEM subjects, academic subjects, and also that career piece. So you're right. It's just a wonderful way to get social entrepreneurs to get their initiatives off the ground, having these frameworks that are provided by the UN SDGs.
Definitely. Thanks, Linda.
Absolutely. So considering that we have a few minutes, we can take up a couple of questions, and panelists, feel free to chime in based on the relevance of the questions here to your work that you're doing. So one of the questions that has come up is to elaborate on how organizations can incorporate ethics in the beginning of the design process, given where we are now.
I can take that. So the first that we get that a lot. And I have run meetups in the Bay Area for a long time. And it's always been attended by a mix of folks, data scientists, engineers, folks who are just trying to stay on top of emerging technologies. And they always come up with, I work for the small startup. We don't even talk about ethics, where do I get started? And we work with, we have people from big companies joining us, women. It's like, how do I raise my voice? How do I say that this isn't okay? So first, it helps to work for an ethical company. So stop there. But not everybody has that opportunity. And again, ethics is still so nebulous. It is a very complex topic. So you start with a baseline. Karen did a great job explaining the frameworks that you use, right? Like, what does ethics even mean for your company? And it should always be grounded in your values. Does your company believe in non-discrimination, right? Like elevating marginalized groups. And does your company, what are your principles related to discrimination? So start with that foundation. Shasha Costanza who wrote the Design Justice book, and the way they described it, they said, look at three things, and I'm sure I messed some of them, but one is look at who it benefits, the technology that you're working on, the AI system that you're building, the cool algorithm you're designing. Who does it benefit? Who does it harm? And who is included in the conversation? And that helps you keep grounded on about what are the harms, and there are, because you want to make sure there are no blind spots. Even if you're a small organization, even if you're a huge organization, you're just asking those three questions will help you stay grounded and avoid those missteps.
Oh, there's another question that has come up, which specifically talks about the participants wants to understand what are those specific skill sets, right, which are very important for many women to start their career in the technology domain. They could be different skill sets based on different industry, but there may be some underlying important basic skills that one could start prepping on. So Linda, considering you work very closely with a lot of girls who want to enter and pursue their careers in STEM and technology domain, would you have some perspectives around that?
Yeah. We hear from a lot of our role models, the first thing you have to do is stay on top of your math skills. It's very important to, before you progress to a different level. I mean, we're reaching out to girls 4th, 5th, 6th grade. They need to continue to build on what research has shown. Boys and girls have complete parity in terms of interest in and aptitude for math and science till about that 4th grade, 9-year-old level. Then for reasons that are internalized, external, cultural, they start to fall behind unless they can see women who are working in fields that utilize those subjects, math and science, and especially, to Karen's point, if it's for work that benefits society, then they're much more likely to stay on track academically. So, we provide women who talk about, this is how I use math and science in my career as a way to sort of provide guardrails, for lack of a better term, for a girl to continue to build on those skills. Then also, you know, the soft skills or the elements of social and emotional learning. It's very important to be empathetic. You know, we had a robotics engineer at our camp who said, if I don't understand what the user, the ultimate user of my robot or my technology actually needs, I'm not going to design a solution that works for them. So empathy, as it represents itself or shows itself to be listening to other people, to understand the challenges that they're facing. So, you know, they talk about it's very important to be able to relate to people. You know, no one builds technology in isolation. You have to work in teams. So it's very important to understand what it takes to be a good team member and also how to lead a team. You know, so many times, I know for me, it was a transition in academia. It's all about what you do, you know, earning that grade, you know, staying up late, getting, you know, the A on that test. But in the real world, in order to make anything happen, you need to be able to work in a team and lead a team, and understanding that that your success is based on how well your team members are developed and are able to perform at their highest level. So, you know, getting girls to understand that really early on in terms of, you know, the parts of social and emotional learning that you combined with academic and subject matter knowledge that's going to make you successful in these technologies. Curiosity, understanding, you know, asking good questions, you know, if you'd like to work on puzzles, just getting them to understand it's the way that they need to think and relate to other people.
Yeah, I'd love to add on that. Linda touched on so many excellent points there, and I think it's so relevant, not only for the younger girls and boys, but also for adults. And for instance, at Stanford in our institute, every summer we run a whole series of workshops for the general public, fundamentals of data science. And so, you know, we're trying to train everyone on those basic building blocks and the skills. And so from an academic standpoint, it's certainly statistics and core math skills, absolutely. A good, strong foundation in some programming languages is very helpful. And we offer those. And then getting into understanding of machine learning and deep learning concepts and different approaches, and data visualization, certainly. Those are, you know, core areas that we try to train on academically. And then also, to Linda's point, it's so critical. We live and work in an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary world. So you can be an awesome technologist, but you have to be able to communicate and work on teams. So we try to incorporate that into many of our courses, in our project-based learning and our research. And then there's the whole ethics piece as well. And along with seminar classes like the one I taught on AI for Good, we're also looking to incorporate ethics into all the classes. We think it shouldn't just be a standalone, but really should be infused into all the courses so that there are examples and considerations. So everyone gets really a full picture coming out. And hopefully we can train the next generation of leaders to have all these skills together.
Would also just like to add something, and I think it would answer this question and the first question. Just like I think Linda talked about empathy, I think that is so important. And I think if we train students or future engineers to be able to empathize, then we'll not have the ethical issues we have. And so to that point, in my class, I adopt the design thinking algorithm, which came out from the design school from Stanford. And I encourage all engineering professors to adopt that. But even in corporations, this is what I say to my students: when you get into industry and you want to start the design of a product, ask your manager who might not have an engineering background and just wants to optimize profitability, you want to use the design thinking approach. Because the first stage in design thinking is empathy. You need to get into the shoes of the user, feel what the user feels. And if you can empathize and understand the user, then you're not going to design systems that will be discriminatory towards the user. So I think the design thinking approach or algorithm from design school from Stanford is heaven sent, because I think that if we adopt that in industry, adopt that in academia, we will ensure and mitigate that there are no biases and that we design products that are not discriminatory and are useful to the end users, especially underrepresented people that sometimes tend to be the people that use the products the most. So I advocate for design thinking.
Can I add to that bit? I love that you said underrepresented people, and I'll tell you why. Technology, Silicon Valley has an ageism problem, right? Everything is young and bright and fresh and new, and I love the work everyone is doing. How do we bring like this next generation into the fall, and how are we training, and how are we the next generation? But we are looking at women in AI ethics, we are opening that up. We're looking at women who are already either have a technical degree or don't have a technical degree, and helping them transition. Because we have a huge population of really smart women out there. They can be in policy, they're in policy, they're in research, they're social scientists. Michelle Carney, who teaches at D School, the Stanford Design School, we profiled her because her background is as a neuroscientist. And now she works in AI. She was one of the first champions for ethics in AI, and she's at Google. So we want to profile women who have taken these unusual paths. So if you are a woman who doesn't fit the mold of, of a technical background, data, STEM, there is a space. There is a place for you in technology. There is a place for you in AI, and you will get a platform in our program to talk about ethics, because often we incentivize what technology can do. We need more women to be speaking up, and we need to hear more from the marginalized groups, especially women, women of color, Black women, Indigenous women, as to how these systems are being designed. So that's what we're working on.
Thanks, Mia. One of the recent publications by McKinsey and Company indicated that specifically in this domain, right, corporate America, and in these recent times, corporate America is at the crossroads, and the choices and the decisions that we make today would have consequences on gender equality on decades to come, right? So we have humongous challenges that lie ahead of us. To be able to come up with most amicable and sustainable solution to these problems, attaining and achieving gender diversity in the technology domain is a must. While there are numerous opportunities that lie ahead of us, the future of women in technology primarily depends on tech industry's ability to inspire young women to take up STEM educational domains or STEM educational subjects in their academic journey, as well as start their career specifically in the corporate sector, not only restrict themselves to the corporate sector in the technology domain, but also focus on pursuing careers in the international development sector as well to achieve a greater socioeconomic impact. With this, I'd like to call for the concluding remarks from this amazing panel on what is your fondest hope for future of women in technology. We just have 1 minute for each panelist to go on this.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
That we have more girls who have the opportunity to engage with diverse women role models, to learn from them, to ask them questions about their career, their educational and life journeys. And the research supports that this was going to lead to more BIPOC women who are going to be creating those algorithms, sourcing those data sets, and designing those empathetic robots. So that's my wish.
I can go next. My wish is that we'll be here back to this panel, flash forward in 10 years, and it will be very different. The ultimate goal of the Women in Data Science Global Initiative is to achieve 30 by 30, 30% women at all levels in their studies, in their careers, regardless of the organization, at the highest level, at least 30% women by the year 2030. And so I'm hoping that we can have that dialogue. We'll be pointing out so many amazing women who are impacting our world, and we'll be all celebrating in 2030 about the progress we've made.
I'll add to that, representation matters. And I hope that next time this panel reconvenes, we may be talking about how we don't have enough men in the space and we have too many women. So that's my hope, 2021 and beyond.
That's great. I think my wish would be that every girl in the world knows what the UN SDG is, sees themselves in the UN SDGs as a change maker, that they can use the UN SDGs to make a change in the world, and that every girl, every woman in the world owns their own computer and is digitally literate. Because I think once women are digitally literate, the conversation will change. And if every girl has a computer and is digitally literate, the conversation will change. So that's my wish. A computer for every woman and every girl in the world.
That's amazing. Thank you all for sharing such amazing perspectives, meaningful insights. I think this is really thought-provoking, and it's helped a lot of our participants and audience who are streaming to this event today. With this, I'd like to thank all of you for your amazing and valuable perspectives that you shared, and also would like to thank our YPD SDG, which is Young Professionals for Sustainable Development Goals Program participants, Axel, Mina, and Emmanuel, who have joined us as co-hosts and moderators today to help us with this event. I would like to extend my hearty thanks to Jasmine, who is the chair of UNSF Communications Committee, and Janisha Jones, who is our digital event manager for today's event, and all the UNSF board members who have helped us in making this event possible. I'd like to thank all the participants for spending their precious time here with us today. We hope you found this panel discussion highly thought-provoking, and we hope that we have inspired you to join us in this journey of attaining United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If you feel inspired enough, feel free to engage with us on social media platforms. And if you want to join us in this journey, please feel free to join us as members of UNSF. With this, we'd like to close this event. Thank you all for participating. Take care, stay safe. We'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.